Today's video includes a multi-part HOA takedown. This one will be remembered as a classic. Here we go. HOA tried to tow my legally permitted vehicle twice in one day. Posted by Desert Nurse 760. I paid cash for a 2-bedroom condo in April. The condo came with 2 parking permits, one red and one green. The updated rules that were sent to me after closing states that an owner gets 2 parking permits, one for covered parking and one for uncovered parking. However, the rules do not state which permit is for which parking. Walking around the neighborhood revealed that both green and red permits under covered parking, as well as about half of the vehicles showing no permit at all. 1 week ago, I received a notice on my windshield that my car would be towed for not showing the proper permit, even though the permit was clearly visible in the corner of the passenger side windshield. Yeah, in fact, the notice was placed under the passenger wiper blade directly above the permit. I called the management company and I informed them of their mistake, along with a picture of the permit in the corner of the windshield. I thought that this would solve the problem, and I was wrong. I am a nurse and I work the night shift. At about 1300 hours, my wife came in screaming that one of her cars was being towed. I immediately got up, I got dressed, and I went outside to find an employee of the management company directing a tow truck to tow my car. She said that it was being towed because it had the wrong color permit. I immediately pulled up the R&Rs on my phone and I asked her to show me where the color codes were explained. She couldn't do that because that explanation doesn't exist in the rules. But she refused to stop the towing company, so I had no choice but to call the police. Upon arrival, I explained to the officers what was happening, and then I showed them the R&Rs on my phone and both of my cars with the proper permits. They told the management employee and the tow company that they had no reason to tow my car. The rep hemmed and hawed that I was parked wrong even if the rules didn't state so. The cop ordered that tow company to release my car. Problem solved, right? Yeah, wrong. I go back to bed and I just fall asleep when my wife comes in screaming that they're towing the car again. I go back outside and the same cop is there from earlier. This time, the president of the management company, which is the one who oversees the HOA board meetings, he's there too, along with the same tow truck driver and employee from before. This time, my car is already up on the flatbed. The manager told police that I still had the wrong permit to use covered parking, even though it was the right one according to this unwritten rule that I'd learned of earlier in the day. The cop asked the manager if she had inspected the permit before calling for the car to be towed, and she admitted, well, that she hadn't, and she was just going off of what the employee had told her from earlier. The cop asked her to verify that the permit was the right color to be under covered parking, and she hesitatingly admitted that it was. The cop was visibly perturbed and again ordered the tow truck to release my vehicle. He then gave a stern talking to the manager about making false claims and not verifying for herself what her employee told her. The cop gave me a case number and said that both reports would be available in 24 hours. I plan to use those reports to bring this to the attention of the HOA board, as I know for certain that the manager will try to sweep this under the rug or will refuse to even acknowledge this incident. What should my next step be? First update. I was finally able to get to the police station for the 2 police reports from that day. Report number 1 at 14:02. Management believes he does not have proper parking permit, but per RP he does. Civil issue between the RP, reporting person, and the management and HOA board over parking. The property has parking guidelines which are unclear of what vehicle could park where. The reporting person has been having issues with one specific board member who states that he harasses him. The reporting person was advised that he could obtain a civil harassment order, and reporting person's vehicle was not towed. Report number 2 at 1800 says, the subject has credentials to park where he was told not to park. HOA did not verify before calling tow. They have been counseled. Truck had proper parking pass, and the HOA manager did not verify before calling a tow. They have been told they must verify prior to calling a tow, or else they could face civil issues. I think this pretty much shows how wrong the HOA management was. I am talking to an attorney about my best legal options. I will update here as things move forward. An edit. I received word from the HOA management company that I would not be allowed to attend the online meeting tomorrow because it is only for the listed owner, who happens to be my wife. And I have a full, legal, valid, and notarized power of attorney that gives me exclusive rights to discuss the property with the HOA board and HOA management. I shot back a nasty email telling the management company to go back to law school. There was an attempt to bar me from the meeting 2 days before it was scheduled. For reasons that I won't go into now, the condo is held in a trust with my son as a beneficiary, which means, from a legal standpoint, he is the holder of the deed. The HOA management company tried to argue that only deed-holding owners can participate in violation hearings. This, despite me having a fully encompassing power of attorney for my son that explicitly gives me the power to manage all real estate holdings. In the end, my son sent an email to the HOA management designating me as his representative in the matter, and they were forced to accept it. However, the meeting was postponed until August 3rd. OP then says I was banned from r/HOA for my previous post. Apparently, they don't take too kindly to people exposing the HOA's screw-ups. From the first viewing to the close of escrow, I have always been the POC. The POA specific to this property has been on file with A, the escrow company, and B, the BIA, the condo is leased on Indian land, and C, my financial institution, and also D, the HOA management company, which is the one causing these problems, and E, the home insurance company. The HOA management company did not even know any of my son's contact info prior to the 24th, as they have never had any reason to interact with him due to the POA. This was a ploy to prevent me from representing myself at the hearing, but it backfired on them. The next update says, if you've been following this saga, you'd know that the HOA had originally scheduled my parking violation hearing for Monday, July 28th, and then they moved it to Tuesday, August 3rd, which is tomorrow. I just received an email stating that they have again rescheduled it for August 17th. I am fairly certain that they did this to conform to California's open meetings law that states that HOAs must announce all meetings ahead of time to all HOA members. They failed to do that for the first 2 scheduled meetings, and apparently someone got wise to their screw-up. I'll keep you posted on the 17th. Today I received a letter from the HOA management that I have violated CC&R and R&R regulations by posting my open letter to HOA members on the HOA bulletin board that's located at the front of the complex next to the mailboxes. I had posted the letter that I had sent to the HOA board regarding the intentional harassment by the board regarding my properly permitted vehicle being intentionally towed on July 7th. I went through both the R&Rs and the CC&Rs and could find no mention of HOA members posting on the HOA bulletin board being illegal. Interestingly, the letter states my violation as posting letter illegally on HOA info boards. I'm no lawyer, but illegally generally means that there is some state or local law prohibiting an act. HOA rules aren't local, state, or federal law, so I don't know why they're using the term illegally. Yeah, no worries, I just laughed it off. My wife and I have decided to go ahead with filing suit against the HOA. We have retained an experienced law firm that only represents homeowners in HOA disputes, and I'll update you as things move forward. It's been a long 2 days. First off, while this parking drama has been unfolding, there is a second issue that I have been dealing with. That is an HOA board member ambushing and harassing me in the parking lot when I leave for work at night. This has happened twice in the 5 months that we have lived here. This is the board member who has placed security cameras at various places around the building, including one that he had pointed at the pool area, apparently recording people at the pool, including children. As a result, I had determined that my best course of action, after filing a complaint with the HOA board twice, which was ignored both times, was to request a restraining order against this individual. A temporary restraining order was denied by the court, and a hearing was scheduled for today, August 18th, to consider the regular restraining order. I arrived at court only to be told that the hearing was rescheduled for September 1st. Important to note is that I received no notice of the date change as is required by law. Upon arriving back home, I was greeted by an email from a high-priced HOA law firm out of Los Angeles. The letter basically states that they are representing the board member and that my RO request has no merit because he was acting within his duties as an HOA board member. What the letter failed to mention was that the first instance of harassment took place before he was seated on the board. The letter goes on about frivolous lawsuits, having to pay the board members' legal fees, blah blah blah. It's a bullcrap letter designed to scare me off of pursuing the RO. One thing of note in the letter is its attempt to conflate my RO request with my continuous parking violations. This board member is the same one who has 2 parking passes that allow him to park both of his cars under the carport. Us regular peons, we only get 1. At the hearing, I logged on through Zoom to find only the HOA management representative with her camera on. The other 4 board members, including the one I have the RO restraining order pending against, were all blacked out. The HOA rep insisted that it was I that requested the meeting and therefore there would be no questions. I would state my case and the board would decide in executive session what my fate would be. I argued that it wasn't me who requested the meeting, it was the board that sent the violation notice to me. Anyway, I made my case the best that I could by pointing out that no new owners were told what the permit was for what parking. I then pointed out that a letter was sent in February with the details of the parking permits, but that I never received that letter when I closed escrow in April. And that letter explicitly states that the permits are non-transferable and registered to the individual units and owners. So the board member with 2 red permits is in violation of the HOA R&Rs. My pleas fell on deaf ears. So now I wait to hear my fate. My wife, who has been supportive, has had enough. She's ready to sell and get the heck out of this nightmare. She went so far as to arrange our realtor to meet with us this Saturday. The good news is that prices have increased roughly 15 to 20% in just 5 months, so if we sell, we will just break even considering our closing cost. Something that I have not mentioned up to now is my ongoing attempt at engaging as many other homeowners as I can in the workings of the HOA and the management company. To that end, I set up a Zoom call and I spread the word. The call was this afternoon and 15 homeowners logged on. All of them related stories from heck concerning the management company and its principal agent who is the de facto head of the HOA, and all agreed that the management company needs to be replaced. One of the homeowners is an active member of the HOA board but is resigning next week. He indicated that 2 other board members are either resigning or moving, so there will be 3 empty seats on the board. Of the 15 on the call, 3 agreed to be nominated to fill those empty slots. It's a start towards cleaning up the HOA board and replacing the management company with a competent one. Lots of you have messaged me asking for an update. Since my last post, the number of disgruntled homeowners who are unhappy with the HOA board and the management company has grown to 46 out of 120 units, a fairly sizable chunk. We have been having weekly Zoom meetings to strategize our responses to the monthly HOA meeting, which happened on 9/22. We had sent a letter to the board prior to the meeting indicating that we had 3 homeowners who were willing to be appointed to the board for the remainder of the term, which expires in February. As I posted earlier, there are 2 board vacancies and another board member, which is the one who has been harassing me, is in escrow and should be closing this week. Our grievances were simple. We are unanimous that the management company should not be in control of the HOA board. The board should control the management company. Many owners expressed dissatisfaction with the parking rules and the fact that the HOA never clearly defined them. Virtually all of us expressed the opinion that the management company should be terminated for a whole host of reasons. At the start of the meeting, the management, which is, really just one person, muted everyone and refused to let anyone talk until after the board appointed 2 of their own people to the vacancies. No discussion was allowed. No questions to the new board members were allowed. Our candidates were not even considered, and the entire board refused to be on camera. Further, the manager would not allow any questions. We could only make statements that were less than 3 minutes long. In her opening, she mentioned a $7,000 legal bill that she stated that the board had incurred defending a board member from an angry homeowner, and yeah, that would be me. She then opened the floor, but would only unmute one person at a time. Person after person expressed their displeasure that 2 new board members were appointed without any discussion or input from the homeowners. Many asked why the board member who was in escrow did not resign from the board and allow at least one of our candidates to be appointed. Again, neither the board nor the management answered any questions. Yeah, there was talk about a recall, which most of my coalition supported. One member, who is not part of our group, asked about that $7,000 legal expense, but the board, again, refused to answer. When it became my turn, I explained the best that I could in 3 minutes why the HOA paid an attorney 7 Gs and how I had been continually harassed by the board and the management. The next few speakers demanded that the HOA and management immediately cease payment to the attorney and asked why the members were not informed of the board's decision to hire one. Out of nearly 50 speakers, only one owner expressed approval of the board and the management company. After the meeting, I received a message for a 65-year-old female owner who forwarded me the harassment that she had endured by the same board member that has been harassing me. I was astounded by how similar our stories were. Her niece had been living with her and found this pervert filming her from his kitchen window, which overlooks the pool area. Same thing happened to my wife, which, along with the other harassment, was why I filed the restraining order. However, in hindsight, I made a very bad decision. When I discovered that his condo was in escrow, I withdrew the restraining order, thinking that he would soon be gone. After discovering this, I immediately sent the board a letter asking why someone who has a documented history of harassment was allowed to be appointed to the board in the first place. I received no answer. My group will meet on Zoom on Sunday to discuss what our next moves should be, and I welcome your input. It's been about a month since I last posted, so here's a quick update. After the previous HOA meeting on 9/22, every homeowner received a letter stating that the board was levying a one-time $185 assessment fee to cover legal fees of $10,000 incurred by the board to defend the, now no longer, board member from my restraining order lawsuit and to cover the recall election that was called for, but then rescinded by my group. It was pointed out by one of us, who happens to be a lawyer, that every HOA board member must be covered under a director's and officer's liability insurance policy. The question was asked why the board did not file a claim on this policy before levying the assessment fee, and why we were being charged for an election recall that never happened. To date, the board has not responded to either question. On the legal front, I attended court on 9/1 to formally withdraw my restraining order complaint on the board member who had been harassing me. I did it because the MLS listed his condo as in escrow, and I figured I wouldn't need a restraining order if he was moving out. The attorney hired by the HOA was there, and the judge asked him if he agreed with the dismissal. He answered that he did. Case closed, or so I thought. A week later, I get a certified letter that they are suing me for attorney fees and cost. At the time, the bill was just under $10,000. The letter claimed that because I withdrew my complaint, the board member was the prevailing party and was entitled to recover attorney fees, and listed a number of court cases in his defense. A quick Google search revealed that all of those cases involved contract law, not civil restraining order cases. So I typed up my response and then I filed it with the court. The hearing to determine if I owed them $10,000 was on October 21st. It took the judge less than 3 minutes to tear their argument to shreds and dismiss their case. Ergo, I'm not paying a dime to the board member or the HOA who hired the attorney. Keep in mind that this board member had resigned on 9/24 when his condo sold, and the HOA attorney was still being paid to defend him. He didn't even come to court as he has moved out of the state completely. On 10/27, there was another monthly HOA meeting. Again, the board allowed no Q&A, just 3 minutes per person. About 30 owners showed up. The day before, the HOA sent out a blast email to owners telling them that the legal fees had increased to $12,000 because of a resident who continues to cause trouble with the board, and that the $185 assessment was to cover that, while they acknowledged that the recall effort was off the table. During my 3 minutes, I explained in bullet points the lawsuit and that the HOA's case against me to collect attorney fees was denied and dismissed by the court. Others asked why the homeowners had to foot the bill for a civil issue not involving the HOA. Again, the board refused to answer any questions and told everyone that they could email their questions to the board. What a frickin' cop-out! I mean, I understand that there has been considerable pressure mounting on the HOA to explain why the D&O insurance wasn't utilized to pay the legal fees. I surmise that the board knows that any investigation into the history of the offending board member would reveal that he had been accused of harassing other owners numerous times before he was seated on the board, and that would preclude him from being covered by the insurance policy. This is an evolving part of the story. On the parking issue, I discovered that the woman who signed the authorization to tow my wife's car is not an HOA employee or a board member, nor is she employed by the management company. As far as we can tell, she is simply a friend of the manager. California law requires that the person authorizing a tow do so in an official capacity as a manager, board member, or employee of the HOA. Bringing this to the attention of the HOA and the management company has got me nothing but silence. I am considering pursuing this in small claims court, as there is another owner whose car was towed that day who was also never provided with the parking rules when they purchased their condo. They are definitely suing the HOA in small claims to recoup the towing fees of nearly $400. That's it in a nutshell, nothing earth-shattering. I was relieved that the judge found in my favor in the lawsuit, and I know that a number of owners are demanding answers from the HOA board. My group is setting our sights on the HOA board election coming up in February. There is nothing the board can do to stop that from happening. Update in the comments. Commenter says, sounds illegal to me to have an HOA foot the bill regarding a civil matter. That guy should have to pay his own legal fees, but I'm not a lawyer. Plus, why is the HOA lawyer still representing him after he sold his unit and isn't on the board anymore? Seriously, that's messed up. OP replies, those are the exact questions that are being asked of the board. They remain silent to all inquiries. Another commenter asked, I want to know who actually hired the lawyer and who is going to end up with the bill when these schmucks get booted off the board and the new board tells the lawyer to pound sand. And OP answers, according to the first letter I received from the attorney, the HOA through the management company hired him. However, nothing in the last 3 months' budget indicates that he has been paid, which is strange. This is a high-dollar LA legal firm. I know for a fact that they don't work on contingency. So somebody paid them, we just don't know who or how it was done. How would you handle these worst HOA neighbors ever? This post is by Sensitive Ad 1896. I lived in the same HOA off and on in my 20s and early 30s. There were 3 or 4 streets and probably no more than about 60 houses in the development. It was a 0 lot line community and, of course, the very worst of the worst HOA jerks live right next door. I received handwritten complaints inside my mailbox, illegal by the way, on multiple occasions. The ones I remember were about trash cans left out for too long. I was in major depressive states on those occasions, and essentially ordered to keep my dog quiet inside my own house when I wasn't even there. They would invite themselves over to my front yard to ambush me while outside with, your garage door doesn't need to be up right now, or your front shrubs need to be trimmed. This oleander should never have been planted here. On so many of these occasions, I wanted to tell this jerk where he could stick it, but he was a good 30 years older and so ridiculously entitled. I didn't have the guts, and it probably wasn't worth it. At some point, my close family member directly across the street started yelling at them as soon as they stepped foot off the road and onto the front of her property. When I left for a few years, the house sat empty while the homeowner, my family member, was in a nursing home, and then moved back. Things had escalated. Before I had left, these jerks had routinely parked a minivan in their driveway. Then their live-in 30-something-year-old adult son got a new car and wanted it more protected, so he made some kind of deal with a woman down the street to use her garage since she didn't need the second parking spot. Fine, cool, I don't care. What I did care about was when they started complaining about cars in my driveway. This wasn't something that I did regularly, but my very close friends ended up in a legitimately unsafe situation where they lived and they came to stay with me while they figured out how to get out of their lease and move. The HOA jerk next door neighbors lost it. They tried to throw the bylaw book at me for having cars stored in the driveway. The cars were being used daily and lots of other people parked in their own driveways consistently. At this point, I went through the bylaws with a fine-tooth comb. As it turned out, there was a rule explicitly barring one homeowner from using the garage of another homeowner. Why? I don't know or care. Of course, that was a rule that didn't need to be followed, but our driveway had to be clear, shrubs trimmed to their liking, and trash cans brought in before the garbage truck was off the street. There were a couple short cul-de-sacs in the neighborhood that ran right up to a ravine, so there was no house at the end of these streets. Apparently, these jerks didn't like that a homeowner parked his work-supplied and branded truck on the street at the end of his cul-de-sac. Their first call to complain wasn't to him, wasn't to the HOA, it was to his employer that supplied the truck. These people were ruthless and garbage humans. These are the same neighbors that complained that I didn't pick up my dog's poo in my own front yard. We didn't have any backyards at all, and almost no one had grass in their small side courtyards. They were upset that my 10-pound dog who runs straight out to pee and straight back wasn't on a leash because their dog was aggressive and pulling out at the same time. Because clearly, my dog being on a leash would totally fix that. Once we got a third car and parked it routinely in the driveway, they all completely lost their minds, knocking at all hours to complain while I worked enterprise sales at home, literally peeking over their courtyard wall into my kitchen, making nasty comments to my boss about me, who they went to church with, and calling my parents and other family to complain about me. These same people caused other residents to walk a certain route to avoid going past the jerk's house. It was a quiet neighborhood, so anytime someone had a party, there was a noise complaint and lots of spying on what exactly was occurring, followed by more complaints more often than not. They convinced the HOA that we shouldn't be allowed to attend HOA meetings or use the pool because our names weren't on the deed. This even though we paid all the bills, the taxes, and the HOA fees directly. Eventually, they let me in the meetings, but tried to tell me that I couldn't speak. That didn't last long. And then they tried to not allow me to vote until my father showed up to a meeting to remind them that he owned 2 properties in the neighborhood by proxy and power of attorney. My final straws were when they had their roof replaced and their roofers entered my courtyard unannounced, seeing me partially clothed in my own kitchen and then trampling my landscaping every day for a week. After that one, I was throwing roofing nails back over their wall and onto their driveway for months. They officially complained to the HOA about a small tree that wasn't trimmed to their liking, so I brought up their son's car in the neighbor's garage, and the woman who owned the said garage ended up throwing a tantrum completely with fake tears in my living room because apparently he was paying her and she needed that income. However, it was particularly satisfying when my partner told the next door neighbor that he didn't like the highly pruned style of their front yard and preferred our slightly more wild look. I swear, that man turned as bright red as a fire truck. Almost as red as when we pointed out that the neighborhood really wasn't that nice due to the enormous metal electric towers running down the middle of our street. There were islands in the road to accommodate these huge things that you could hear buzzing even from inside 24/7. About 6 months before we bought our house and got the heck out of there, I was walking my dog on a leash and she peed in another neighbor's yard on the way by. We turned to continue and I heard a voice say, "Clean up after the dog." Well, I turned around and there was no one there. This woman was yelling at me through her doorbell about non-existent dog poop. I am not proud to say that I saw red and proceeded to read her the riot act into her doorbell and pressing it repeatedly, telling her to come out. She never said another thing, never came out, and I never did see the woman ever. I never did bring up that my awful neighbors had at least 2 businesses running out of their house, strictly forbade in the bylaws, literally broke into the irrigation system controls to water their yard more on the HOA's dime, or that they had a visible water spigot and hose in their front yard. It just wasn't worth it. Perhaps this was more of a post about bad neighbors, but I will never, ever, as long as I live, own or live in an HOA again. My family is fully out of there now, and no one has anything nice to say about the place. Do you agree with these commenters? On In order to keep the dog quiet inside the own house, commenter says, I didn't need to read past this. How dare someone expect peace in their own home? OP says, you come to my door and tell me that a 10-pound dog behind the brick walls of my house is disturbing you from inside your bricked house, and I'm gonna laugh while I slam the door in your face. Comment says, can we not compare everyone we don't like to that group? That's super messed up and insensitive. Frankly, you both sound insufferable. What'd you think of this story? The HOA towed me, but I'm not even in the HOA. Should I press charges? Click the video on your screen so you don't miss this awesome story, and I'll see you there.